Okay, right. Let's go ahead and start today's class. Okay, so today we are covering exchange rates policy. So this is supposed to be part of the macroeconomic policies package. I am in the midst of sending out your textbook, so I've already sent most of them out. You should be getting them sometime next week, right? So sometime next week you'll be getting this textbook. Sorry, it's reversed. Right, so your notes for the entire term 2 is inside, right? So everything that you should be getting for term 2 is inside. So you should receive this in your mail by Monday to Friday next week. I already sent them out. So, but SingPost has a cluster. I'm not too sure if you all heard of it. So there might be some delivery package delays. So you may have to wait for a couple of days. But I've already dropped in the notes for the whole of April in your WhatsApp. So you should have a copy of the notes. If you don't have, you can let me know. Drop me a WhatsApp. My number is 81823036. Okay? Right, so for today, we are covering macroeconomic policies. The first thing that we're covering today is exchange rates. So that's what we are focused on today. We're covering exchange rate policies today. Right? I'm going to start first by going through the different kinds of exchange rate systems in the world. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to have to do a sound and visual and screen check. Number one, can you hear me clearly? If yes, please type yes in. Okay, three answer to these three questions are: number one, can you see me clearly? Number two, can you hear me clearly? And number three, can you see my screen? You should show a PowerPoint slide stating exchange rate systems at this juncture. So if your answer is yes, there's a chat box that you can reply to. Please use the chat box to reply. Okay, so seems like everybody is able to hear me clearly, so I'm gonna go ahead and begin my class. Okay? Right, so there are three different kinds of exchange rate systems that exist in the world, and we are gonna talk about each and every one of them. We'll start with the free floating exchange rate system. Now, what is the free floating exchange rate system? The free floating exchange rate system is the most common kind of exchange rate system that exists in the world today. Right? So what are the countries that uses a free exchange rate, free floating exchange rate system? Okay, we have countries like the US, we have countries like European Union, so the Eurozone uses a free floating exchange rate. We have countries like Japan. So all of these major developed economies, most of them, they use a free floating exchange rate system. Okay, right. So what is exactly a free floating exchange rate system? The free floating exchange rate system is called free floating because the government doesn't actively intervene. There is no direct government intervention in a free floating exchange rate system, which means to say that the value of the currency, whether the currency is appreciating or the currency is actually depreciating, is entirely determined by forces of demand and supply. So the government doesn't come in and say, okay, I want the currency to appreciate today, or I want the currency to depreciate today. No. So the government doesn't play an active role in the intervention of a free floating exchange rate system. So your currency can appreciate or depreciate freely. Okay, now so there is a problem with a free floating exchange rate system is that they are very volatile. Your prices can go up significantly in a day, they can go down significantly in a day. They are subject to significant fluctuations. Okay, right, and the only good thing about free floating exchange rate system is that it doesn't require a foreign exchange reserve requirement. Now, I'm going to take some time here to explain to you the difference between the reserves that we have been talking about the last few days and the reserves that we are talking about today. There are different kind of reserves, so you've got to pay attention that there are different kinds of reserves. Okay, so I want you to imagine that every country got two piggy banks. Okay, there are two piggy banks. So my drawing is not very good. So this is piggy bank A. Okay, so piggy bank A, and then this is piggy bank B. Okay, so piggy bank A and piggy bank B. I know they don't look like piggy banks, but okay. So piggy bank A, okay, is your foreign exchange reserves. Foreign exchange reserve means it's a piggy bank where you put all your non-domestic currency money. So like for example, you can put Chinese yuan, you can put Japanese yen, you could put euro, you could put renminbi, you could put rupiah, you can put all kinds of foreign currency in it. This is called your foreign exchange reserves. Alright? Then the general terms that we always say reserves is a different kind of reserve. It's typically nominated in your own domestic currency. So it's typically in your own domestic currency. Now, in the last few days, right, you should have watched the resilient budget. If you haven't, I urge you to go and spend some time watching the resilient budget, okay? So that is the supplementary budget that was announced by DPM Heng Swee Keat. So I'll urge you to take some time to go and watch it. But you should have heard the news that we are using the reserves in a way that we have never done so before. Okay, the reserves that we're talking about in the last whole week, these reserves is another kind of reserves. These reserves, how is it accumulated? Is when year after year you have a budget surplus. So a budget surplus is what? A budget surplus is when the government revenue is more than the government expenditure. Then you got extra money. The extra money goes inside these reserves. Okay, that is the reserves that we're talking about. Now this foreign exchange reserve is different. No? This foreign exchange reserve is the reserve that you have of other currencies. How is this reserves built up? This reserve is built up because of BOP surplus. So what is BOP surplus? We covered that in lesson J3, right? So if you have all the modules available now, right? Like you're gonna spend a lot of time at home. You're not supposed to go out. You're supposed to stay at home after school. Don't like go and chiong or what. Right? So you got a lot of time now, right? So better go and spend some time, go and catch up on your econs, right? So we have given you all the access to all the previous modules. You can go and watch. Lesson J3 is the lesson on balance of payments. J3. Okay, go and watch. Right, so this BOP surpluses, right, how is it accumulated? So every year, right, if you have a BOP surplus, it's because the inflow of money to your country exceeds the outflow of your money from your country, which is because of current account and capital account surpluses. Okay, so when you have BOP surpluses, okay, the extra money that comes in your country, it goes into your foreign exchange reserves. This is called foreign exchange reserve. Then this one, the A is foreign exchange reserves, the B is just your normal reserves. They are different kind of reserves. Please bear in mind that the kind of reserves is a little bit different. Okay? Right, so are you okay? If you have any questions, you can like behave like you're in a normal lesson, or you can nod your head, or you can shrug, you can like shake your head. Like don't need to even do it virtually, you can just do it in physically, because I can see you. If your web cameras are turned on, that's why I need your web cameras to be turned on. So please make sure your web cameras are turned on. Right? If you can, if you understand this, please nod your head so I know that you understand. Okay, good, very good, well done. Okay, so let's go on to talk about what changes currency in a free floating exchange rate system. Now, if your country is adopting a free floating exchange rate system, then your appreciation or depreciation will be entirely due to forces of demand and supply. So we're going to start looking at some demand and supply diagrams. So what can cause your currency to appreciate? Okay, your currency will appreciate if you have either an increase in demand or you have a decrease in supply. Okay, so an increase in demand is demonstrated by a rightward shift of the demand curve from DD0 to DD1, whereas a fall in supply is reflected by a leftward shift in the supply curve from SS0 to SS1. Okay, any questions so far? Right, so that will cause an appreciation of the currency. Okay, let's move on to look at the depreciation of the exchange rate. Now, what can cause your currency to depreciate? Now, so your currency can depreciate if there is a decrease in demand or an increase in supply. So a decrease in demand is reflected by a leftward shift of the demand curve, and the increase in supply is reflected by a rightward shift in the supply curve. You can see in both cases your prices fall. Okay, just like previously the prices were increasing. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. What causes an appreciation and depreciation? It follows the forces of demand and supply. But the difficult part is actually not these diagrams. These diagrams should be quite straightforward for you to draw by now. Okay, this is basic demand and supply. I think what we need to spend time paying attention to talking about is, so what causes your demand and supply for the currency to change? Okay, so we're gonna talk about them one by one. We'll start first with inflation rate. Okay, we start first with inflation rate. Now, when a country's inflation goes up, okay, you all can use the chat box to answer me. When a country's inflation goes up, goods and services in the economy becomes more Answer using the chat box. When inflation is higher in the economy, goods and services in the economy become more, right? Absolutely, it becomes more expensive, right? The more you respond, the smoother this lesson is gonna go, so that I don't have to like keep stopping to see your responses. So just go ahead and answer anyway, right? So the higher the inflation rate goes, the more expensive goods and services in the economy becomes. Now, as goods and services in the economy becomes more expensive, it becomes more expensive for foreigners to buy. So if goods and services in your economy has become more expensive for foreigners to buy, what happens to demand for the country's exports? Go, tell me. Yes, if the demand for the country's exports fall, then what happens to demand for the country's currency to buy the country's exports? Go. Right, absolutely, right? So when there's higher inflation, okay, the prices of exports will become more expensive for foreigners. So your demand for the country's exports will fall. If demand for the country's exports will fall, then demand for the exchange rate will fall. Then your exchange rate will actually depreciate. Right? Does that make sense to you? Okay, right. So we go on to talk about next interest rates. Now, how does interest rate affects your exchange rates? Now, we have to bring in this concept called hot money flows. Now, your hot money is also sometimes called short-term capital. So your hot money flows and your short-term capital flows, they're pretty much referring to the same thing, right? So now let's go on and talk about what interest rates do to exchange rates. Now, if a country's interest rates were to go up, okay, it will attract hot money flows. Let me explain to you what hot money flows are. Now imagine if you have got money lying around doing absolutely nothing except for collecting interest, right? If you got money that's lying around doing nothing that's collecting interest, right? Let's call this money hot money. Now where would this hot money want to go? Yeah, you all tell me. Would this hot money want to go to places where the interest rates are high, or does it want to go to places where interest rates are low? You tell me. High or low? Okay, right, so it will go to places where interest rates are going to be high. So your hot money will move from areas of low interest rates to areas of high interest rates. Okay, that is what is going to happen to your hot money. So when a country increases its interest rates, okay, what is going to happen is that it's going to invite hot money inflow. Okay, and hot money inflow actually causes your demand. Sorry, I need to use. Okay, sorry, hot money inflow. Okay, so when you have hot money inflow, it actually causes the demand for your currency to go up. Because if you want to put your money in this country, you got to first buy the currency to put the money in that country's banks, okay, or wherever it is in the country. If you feel that this country has good interest rates, you want to put your money in this country, you got to first exchange your currency for this country's currency, which means you're gonna buy that country's currency. When you buy that country's currency, the demand for the currency will go up, which means they say that your exchange rates will appreciate. In other words, interest rate increasing is going to cause exchange rates to appreciate. And vice versa, if your country's interest rates are going down, okay, it will cause hot money outflow because people are saying that, oh, your interest rates are crap, I don't want to put my money here. So they don't put their money here means they're going to sell the currency. Okay, they want to sell the currency in exchange for other currency, means the supply of the domestic currency will increase. If the supply of the domestic currency is going to increase, then your exchange rates is going to fall. Okay, if you're wondering why I'm not looking at the web camera, is because I have two screens. One screen I have this screen here, I have the slides, and then this screen here I'm looking at is basically the screen where I can see all of your faces. So that's the reason why I'm looking at not the screen with the web camera. Alright, okay, so let's move on to point number 3. Now point number 3 is changes in trade. Okay, what is changes in trade? Okay, let's talk about something pretty saddening right now. Okay, the situation right now. Now, with this COVID-19 crisis happening in Singapore right now and the rest of the world, can you tell me what's happening to tourism in Singapore? Now, what's happening to tourism? Come on. What's happening to tourism, guys? What, decreasing? Is that like an understatement or what? Can you use more extreme terms? Hey, we close our borders We close No one can come in So is that it's just decreasing? Right, I think what is like freaking non-existent, absolutely, right? So there's nothing. Okay, right, tourism is export. Do you know? Do you know that tourism is counted as an export? It's an export of a service, right? It's a service export. That is what tourism is about. And when your foreigners buy things from our retail shops, that is also a tourism export of good, right? So your tourism basically counts for exports, right? Okay, so what's happening to demand for Singapore's exports at this juncture? Increasing or decreasing? Demand for Singapore's exports, is it increasing or is it decreasing? Right, absolutely, the demand for Singapore exports are decreasing. Now, so if there is less demand for Singapore's goods and services, okay, if there's less demand for our goods and services, then what is going to happen to demand for our currency? What's going to happen to demand for our currency? Okay, right? So if demand for our currency is going to fall, then what is going to happen to our currency value? It's going to depreciate. Okay, right, absolutely. Right, so if there is a fall in demand for the country's exports, okay, there will be a fall in demand for the country's currency, okay, which will cause the exchange rate to depreciate, and vice versa. So the more trade, the more exports you sell, the greater demand for your currency, then the more your currency will appreciate, and vice versa. Right, next, let's talk about political stability. Now, so political stability affects a lot of things. Like, for example, if your country is going through, let's say, war, or is going through a military coup, or is going through a change in government, do you think investors are going to be confident about the economy? Do you think consumers are going to be going out to spend money? Right, so if that's the case, right, then your investors' confidence is falling, then your investors are not buying or investing in goods and services, then they will not be buying your currency as well, right? So if there's poor political stability, then your exchange rate will depreciate, and vice versa. If your political stability is there, then your exchange rate will appreciate because people will continue or increase their investment in your country. Hey, and then right now, okay, how's the investment climate worldwide? Do you think anybody is looking to invest in Singapore right now? Do you think anybody is like coming into Singapore to invest right now? Okay, relatively speaking, maybe lah, but in absolute terms, I don't think anybody is doing any form of investments right now. Okay, if the country has good investment climate, then people want to do investment. But to do investment, like for example, they want to start a company in your country, right? They need to buy like factories, they need to hire workers, they will need to buy your currency. When they buy your currency, they will demand for your currency. When they demand for your currency, your exchange rate will appreciate, right? So if there's good investment climate, okay, then your exchange rate will appreciate. If there's bad investment climate, then your exchange rate will depreciate because the demand for your currency will be affected accordingly. Now, so what have we gone through so far is that we have actually touched on what affects a free floating exchange rate system. So bear in mind that most developed countries in the world actually uses a free floating exchange rate system. This is the most commonly used form of exchange rate system. Alright, so we are going to go ahead and talk about next fixed exchange rate system. Now, which countries in the world use a fixed exchange rate system, right? You are going to be surprised. So Hong Kong actually pegged its currency to the US dollar. Okay, Brunei actually pegs its currency to the Sing dollar. Alright, many African countries, okay, peg their currency to the US dollar. Okay, right, so the most third world developing countries actually uses a fixed exchange rate system. Okay, China used to use a fixed exchange rate system. It doesn't now. It uses a managed float now, but it used to use a fixed exchange rate system. Now, what is a fixed exchange rate system? The fixed exchange rate system, as the term suggests, right, the exchange rate is always constant. It's always constant means that X dollar of my currency is always equals to Y dollar of this other currency, and it doesn't change. X will always be equals to Y. Okay, and X and Y are numbers that are constant and it doesn't change. Now, in order to maintain a fixed exchange rate system, okay, there are a few conditions. Like number one, the government, or rather the central bank, has to step in on a day-to-day basis to do intervention. It needs to step in to intervene by buying and selling domestic currency on the foreign exchange market to maintain that level of exchange rate. Okay, the other important thing to note is that in order to do this, you need to have ample foreign exchange reserves. Means you need to have a strong reserve of other countries' currencies, okay, in order to carry out a fixed exchange rate system. Alright, so how does a fixed exchange rate system work? Now, once upon a time, China has used a fixed exchange rate system, so I'm going to show it to you how does a fixed exchange rate system work. Now, let's imagine that the market equilibrium is currently at E0. So the equilibrium price is P0 and Q0, P0 and Q. But if the Chinese government feels that, hey, this value of the currency is too high, I don't like this value, I want the currency to be at value P fixed. I want it to be at P fixed, I don't want it to be anywhere else. So I'm going to set the currency value at P fixed. Now, so if the currency is currently at the value P0, it would be beyond the pegged rate. If it's beyond the pegged rate, then what's going to happen is your Chinese government, the central bank of China, is going to actually step in to intervene via buying or selling of the domestic currency in order to actually maintain the peg or P fixed. So what exactly are they going to do? I'm going to show you. It's very simple. Now, so we're going to shift the supply curve to the right from SS0 to SS1 like that. Can you see? So it will increase from SS0 to SS1. Now, increasing supply, right, means you are selling domestic currency. Okay, so you're selling domestic currency. Okay, but if you're wondering what does it mean when you're selling domestic currency, I want you to have an imagination of the foreign exchange market. Foreign exchange market, do you know what's a mini foreign exchange market? You know, you go to a shopping mall to go to money changer, you know money changers? Do you realize that money changers are mini foreign exchange markets? Do you realize that? Why because you go there and buy and sell currency, what? Correct or not? Doesn't that make it a market for foreign currencies? Yes, right? So you go to a money changer. If you are selling him your Sing dollar, what are you doing? You go and think about it. Tell me. If you go to a money changer, you say, uncle, this one Sing dollar give you. What are you doing? You're selling Sing dollar to him means you're getting what back? Come on, quick. You sell Sing dollar to him, you get what back? Hello? Answer please. You go to money changer, you sell Sing dollar, what do you get back? And you got one answer. Come on. Okay, so you sell Sing dollar, you're gonna get back foreign currency, right? So if the Chinese central bank goes to the foreign exchange market and starts to sell Chinese renminbi or Chinese yuan and renminbi are interchangeably used, by the way. So you go to the foreign exchange market and then you're selling Chinese yuan or renminbi. You're actually buying a foreign currency like the US dollar, for example. Okay, so you're selling domestic currency is the same thing as you are buying foreign currency. They are the same. They are happening simultaneously. Okay. Right, so if here they are increasing supply of the domestic currency, it means they are selling domestic currency. They're selling domestic currency means that the Chinese central bank is going into the foreign exchange market to buy foreign currencies. Okay? Okay, let's move on. Okay, finally, we move on to what Singapore uses. Okay, we'll take a short break after this slide. Okay, so we finally move on to what Singapore uses. Singapore uses a managed float exchange rate regime. Okay, what is a managed exchange regime? Now, if you think about the free floating exchange rate system, it's too volatile. It has too much fluctuations. Your currency can appreciate or depreciate on a day-to-day basis too significantly, which is bad. You think about fixed exchange rate system, is too rigid. Okay, it doesn't give any room for maneuver, so it's also bad. So Singapore actually practices in the middle kind of approach towards the exchange rates. Instead of fixed, instead of free floating, we say, okay, we are gonna do a managed exchange rate system, which is an in-between system, in between the fixed and floating. So how does the in-between system works? Now I'm gonna draw a diagram to show it to you. I hope this. Let me see. Let me try to see if this color works. I have more space on the orange side, so I'm gonna draw on the orange side. So hopefully you can see. Okay, let's go. So can see or not? The blue. Can see the blue? Okay, okay, so okay, imagine this is your current exchange rate. The government say, okay, I think no good. This is not good. Why is it not good? It's not good because it's subject to fluctuation. So the government say, okay, I'm going to implement this. Okay, this is P maximum and this is P minimum. So the government actually says, okay, if it's between these two black lines, I am not gonna intervene at all. I'm gonna let the currency float freely. As long as it is within these two black lines, I'm not gonna touch the currency. We are happy. Two black lines, okay, no problem. We're not gonna touch. The currency can appreciate, it can depreciate, as long as it's within these two black lines. Okay? The moment the currency goes beyond these two black lines, okay, then the central bank will say, I'm going to step in, I'm going to intervene, I'm going to bring it to within these black lines. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay, let's say that okay, maybe if we manage to reach 0 cases, okay, of COVID-19 one day zero new cases what do you think people will think of the Singapore economy? Go faster, think about it. If we reach 0 cases, one day we've got 0 cases of local and imported cases of COVID-19. What happened to demand for the Sing dollar? Go, tell me. Okay, so the demand for Sing dollar will increase, right? Because the political stability, the investment climate, it will start to improve, right? So people will think that, hey, gee, it's good to park my money in Singapore. It's good to start investing in Singapore because Singapore looks all well now. Okay, so then let's say the demand for the currency increases so rapidly, wow, like that. It goes from DD0 to DD1. Then how? DD1 will bring the currency to somewhere around here, P1. Is the government able to accept that the currency appreciates so much? Will the government accept it? No, it won't accept it, right? So if it doesn't accept it, then what is it gonna do? So it's gonna say, okay, I'm not happy with that, I'm gonna carry out an intervention. So how does it carry out intervention? Very easy. Can you see? So it will go to the foreign exchange market, it will start selling Sing dollars. It starts to sell Sing dollars. Do you remember what I said about selling your currency? You're selling your currency means you're doing what? You're buying foreign currency. When you sell your domestic currency, you are buying foreign currency. So it will increase the supply of our domestic currency on the foreign exchange market in order to buy foreign currency. It will bring it back to Pmax, which is the maximum range that it allows. Okay? Right, so this is actually your managed float exchange rate system. This is how your managed float exchange rate system works. Okay? Now, so over here, we're gonna take a short break, 5 minutes, okay? Cause my drink is too sweet, I'm gonna go add some ice water to it. So, right, we'll come back in 5 minutes. So feel free to go for a short toilet break, go and grab your lunch if you need to grab your lunch or anything, and then we will come back in 5 minutes time, okay? To continue with the balance of the slides. Okay, right. in some articles for you guys to read. Okay, once you're ready, please turn back on your web camera so that I know that you're back and I can resume. Okay, web cameras back on to let me know you're ready and you're ready to resume. Okay, I've dropped in some articles for you all to read as well. There is also a Wall Street Journal article that you can download. I've dropped the file in, so you can have a look at those later at your own free time. Now, so I'm gonna start with talking about monetary policy in Singapore, which is a very important thing to pay attention to because there's quite pretty much some tough concepts here that we want to address. Now, first, there is something that is very important for you to know. That typically, right, when we refer to monetary policy, right, we are referring to interest rates monetary policy. So by default, 99% of the time, when we are talking about monetary policy, it refers to changing interest rates. I repeat, 99% of the time, when we're talking about monetary policy, we are referring to interest rates. Okay, changing interest rates. Okay, if you recall what monetary policy is about, you increase interest rates, okay, to cut consumption and investment, which cuts AD, which cuts general price level, which deals with demand pull inflation. You carry out expansionary monetary policy by cutting interest rates. When you cut interest rates, consumption investment rises, AD rises, real national income rises, you have higher economic growth. So when we talk about monetary policy, 99% of the time we are talking about changing interest rates. Okay, 99% of the time. You read any economic textbook, you're talking about any country in the world, 99% of the time when you're talking about monetary policy, you're talking about interest rates monetary policy. Okay, but you know Singapore is always the two-pattern one. We are always out of the norm. Okay, when we talk about Singapore, monetary, it's not interest rates. Okay, so when you talk about monetary policy and you talk about Singapore, okay, it is the exception to the norm. We don't talk about interest rates. Whenever you see monetary policy and see Singapore in the same sentence, we are talking about exchange rates based monetary policy. And again, we are one of the very few rare countries in the world that uses exchange rate as a policy instrument for conducting monetary policy. So we are not the norm. So don't take it to be, oh, every country monetary policy we're talking about exchange rate. No. Almost every single country when you talk about monetary policy, you're talking about interest rates. So we make sure we get that clear first, okay, before we even start talking about monetary policy in Singapore. So again, like I said, monetary policy in Singapore, when you see that, you're talking about your exchange rates. You're not talking about interest rates, okay? So we don't manipulate interest rates. We are an interest rate taker, okay? So we do not manipulate interest rate. We actually carry out exchange rates, monetary policy. Now here's a simple explanation to why we use exchange rate instead of interest rates. Okay, I'll start with a first point. Okay, my first point is this. What is the formula for your AD? Okay, man, I don't like green. Let's change the color. Why green? The one green. Red. Let's erase the green. Okay. Okay, let's go on. So we were saying your AD formula is given by C plus I plus G plus X minus M. I'm sure you're familiar with the formula, right? Alright? So when we're looking at this formula, AD equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M, okay, you bear in mind that your interest rate monetary policy, it targets what? Your interest rate monetary policy, it targets consumption, it targets investment. Right? That is what interest rate target. You change interest rate to influence consumption, you change interest rate to influence investments. That's what you change interest rates for. That is what monetary policy is supposed to do. Okay, first, let me ask you, domestic consumption in Singapore, is it big or is it small? Big or small? Small, domestic consumption is small. Okay, why is C for Singapore small? Why is it small? It's small because our population is 5.5 million. So we have a very small population, so our domestic market is very small. It's also, other than that, we have this thing called high leakages. Can anybody explain to me what's the meaning of high leakages? Anybody explain to me what's the meaning of high leakages? What the heck is high leakages? What the heck is the meaning of high leakages? How does money leave the circular flow? What is the high withdrawal in the form of what? No. Yes, through imports. So a lot of things that we consume, you myself don't consume. You like if the government give everyone $1,000 now, then you use it to go and buy an iPhone, does it help our economy? If the government gives you $1,000 now, you know what you should go and do? You should buy economics tuition services. You should buy my crash course because I'm a local service. Okay, if you buy an iPhone, okay, you buy a Samsung phone. You buy Samsung phone, the money go where? Go, tell me. You buy a Samsung phone, the money go where? You buy a Apple iPhone, the money go where? Okay, so that's the problem. So a lot of our spending, right, are on imported goods, which is actually a leakage to the economy. So that's why I give you extra money, also no use. Right, you're gonna spend on these items, and there's no use. Right? So anyway, this is a very, very important message. Do tell everyone, if your parents are still doing well, it means they haven't lost their job, they still maintain their income, they should go out and support your local firms, your local services, like your hairdresser, your hawkers, anything that doesn't involve buying goods from overseas, you should go and support them. Okay? Right, but in Singapore, since we have very high leakages, so consumption is not a very effective means that we can use to increase aggregate demand. Does that make sense? So you use interest rate to target consumption, no use. Number one is small. Number two, leakages are high. So targeting consumption, not very helpful. Okay, so that's the first thing to pay attention to. Next, what's the problem with investment? What's the problem with targeting investment? So here's something to ask you. Is investment big or small in Singapore? Go. Big or small? Big or small? Big or small? Big. Then if it's big, then why don't target investment? Okay, if target investment. The problem with investment in Singapore is a lot of our investment are, what kind of investments? FDI, right? So if a lot of our investments are FDI, right, I've got two questions for you regarding FDI. So FDI are your like Apple, your Microsoft, Facebook, Google, 海底捞, IKEA. So all of these are your foreign direct investments. They are very very big firms. Number one, these big firms do they have a lot of cash to begin with? These big firms, Dyson, Rolls-Royce, do they have a lot of cash to begin with? These big firms, tell me. So do you think they need to borrow money from our local banks like DBS, OCBC in order to invest? Do you think they need to borrow money? No need what? They don't need to borrow money what? Okay, that's one. Number two, if they do really need to invest, if they do really want to borrow money to invest, do they need to borrow from our local banks or can they borrow from their home country banks? Right, so they'll borrow from their home country banks instead of borrowing from or local banks, right? Which means, you know what, it tells you that investment, there's a term to this, it is interest rates inelastic. Okay, it is interest rate inelastic, which means to say that they are not responsive to interest rate changes. Okay, if they're not responsive to interest rate changes, then what should you do? Okay, you will find that carrying out consumption or investments, influencing consumption investment is not so helpful. So you realize that using interest rate as a policy instrument, which it targets consumption, it targets investment, it is really not quite helpful for us, right? So doesn't make sense for us to target consumption and investment. Okay. Right. So if that's the case, then what should we do? We should rule out using consumption and investment, targeting consumption and investment because of these reasons. And interest rate targets consumption and investment, which makes interest rate as a policy instrument not very helpful. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing I want to tell you is that which is the largest component of our AD, C, I, G, or X minus M? Okay, it's actually your X minus M, right? So if it is your X minus M, then when you manipulate exchange rates, okay, when your currency becomes stronger or your currency becomes weaker, it affects prices of exports, it affects prices of imports. That's the reason why targeting exchange rate has a more powerful impact than targeting consumption and investment, because targeting your exchange rates actually targets your X minus M as opposed to anything else. Okay. And the last thing here is to actually see, okay, if we live in an imaginary world whereby Singapore had decided that, okay, we are going to use interest rate as a policy instrument anyway. If we live in this imaginary world, I want you to picture this. The moment the central bank, MAS, okay, increase interest rates, what is going to happen in this imaginary world? The moment we increase interest rate, you're going to attract what? Yes, you're going to attract hot money inflow. And if you just visualize and recall what hot money inflow is, so if the rest of the world, and we're not talking about Singapore, we're talking about the whole freaking rest of the world, everybody in the rest of the world thinks that, oh, Singapore is a good place to invest, it has damn good interest rates, let's all go and buy Sing dollar. So the whole world comes buying Sing dollars. Whole world go and buy Sing dollars. How? What happened to the value of Sing dollar? A bit or a lot? So can or not? Can our Sing dollar appreciate a lot or not? Is it good for us? Right, so it's not good for us, right? So very small changes in interest rates will cause very, very big and sudden fluctuations in our exchange rate. That is by the virtue of Singapore being a very small country. So the amount of currencies that we have available in circulation is also not going to be very significant. Okay, so this is going to be a very, very big problem for us. So that's why we actually cannot manipulate interest rate as a policy instrument. So with these three reasons, you should now understand why Singapore uses exchange rate as a policy instrument as opposed to using interest rates. Okay, right, so let's move on. Now next, we talk about the basket band crawl principles of the monetary policy in Singapore. What's basket band crawl? So this BBC, you need to remember this basket. What is basket? Basket is that the Sing dollar is actually managed against a basket of goods and basket of currencies that are of our major trading partners. So they do not disclose what are these currencies, but we can make some guesses and they will be quite excellent guesses. So these currencies that we manage against will very clearly be including US dollar, the euro, the renminbi, the Malaysian ringgit, the Indonesian rupiah, okay, the Japanese yen, right, the Hong Kong dollar. Okay, these are all either our major trading partners or major economic competitors. So we will likely be managing our currencies against these major currencies. Right, next, band. So if you recall, we already talked about the band just now. So we go back here. So if you recall, this is what the band looks like. The band, you are basically allowing for upper limit and a lower limit to be imposed. Okay, so you are happy if the currency is floating within these bands. You are not happy if the currency goes outside this band, then you will intervene. Within the band, within two black lines, no intervention. Beyond the two black lines, central bank steps in to intervene via buying and selling of the domestic currency. So that is the band principle. And then lastly, the crawl principle. Now, we generally want our currency to crawl upwards. In other words, most of the time, our approach that we take is a modest and gradual appreciation of our Singapore dollar. Right, so then we generally review this twice a year. Okay, we will see whether this modest and gradual appreciation is still appropriate. Okay, twice a year. Okay, once on 14 April and once on 14 October. The dates don't differ much. Most of the time it's on these 2 days, and then it happens to fall on Saturday or Sunday, then it will be brought forward to 15, 16 or 13. Alright, so twice a year we will review to see how's the economy currently and is this modest and gradual appreciation still an appropriate one to carry out. Now I'm going to go through review this modest and gradual appreciation of the Sing dollar review. Now, so Singapore, we adopt a modest and gradual appreciation of the Sing dollar. But why? Why do we want appreciation of the Sing dollar? Let's start first with talking about why do we want the Sing dollar to appreciate. Now, first, bear in mind that the number one objective of any central bank in the world is usually got to do with this thing called price stability. And if you were to link price stability to your four macroeconomic goals, price stability is actually short form for low and stable rate of inflation. Okay, that is what central banks around the world typically want of their economy. They want the inflation to be low and stable, and that is what MES wants as well. So, to carry out an appreciation, the main objective is to actually curb inflation. But how does a stronger Sing dollar help to curb inflation? Now, firstly, it helps to deal with imported inflation. Now, what is imported inflation? Don't go telling your parents this. If not, later they panic and then they go and stockpile. But if you read the news, Vietnam has implemented export restrictions on rice. And rice, Vietnam is the largest rice exporter in the world. So if Vietnam is putting export restrictions on rice, then the world supply of rice will fall. So what will happen to the price of rice? It will increase, right? The price of rice will increase, right? What's the problem with price of rice increasing? So the problem is that does Singapore produce rice? We don't produce rice, right? So we import all our rice, right? So the price of rice outside of Singapore goes up. Does the price of rice in Singapore go up as well? So we call that what kind of inflation? Imported inflation, because the inflation is imported. Now, how does a stronger Sing dollar help with this? A stronger Sing dollar will help with this because if your Sing dollar is stronger, then your imported goods will become cheaper, right? So it helps to curb imported inflation. And on top of that, in Singapore, it will help to deal with cost push inflation because we import most of our raw materials. Okay, if not, actually we import all of our raw materials. After all, does Singapore produce any wood? Do we produce any metals? Okay, do we produce any sand, for example? We don't produce any of these raw materials in general, or oil. Do we? I mean, we produce oil lah, but we have to import oil to refine lah. So when these imported inputs become more expensive and your currency becomes stronger, it makes these imported inputs cheaper, which helps to reduce your cost push inflation. Okay. Right, and lastly, because we are usually operating at full employment level, so any increase in X minus M causes an increase in AD, which can cause demand pull inflation. So if the Sing dollar becomes stronger, your exports become more expensive. If your exports become more expensive, your X minus M will fall, your AD will fall, it reduces demand pull inflation. So you can see, in other words, what is the appreciation of the Sing dollar supposed to do? It's supposed to deal with one problem, and that problem is inflation. Okay, so that is the thing about appreciation. Now, why modest? Why gradual? Modest means small. Gradual means slow. Why small and why slow? Why? Okay, the reason why you want small and incremental increases in our currency is because there is a downside to our currency becoming stronger, and this downside is that our exports become more expensive. So if our exports is becoming more expensive, and exports is very important for our survival, like we cannot let our exports competitiveness keep being eroded away one. So we can make sure that the currency increments are small and it's done very slowly. Right, and how would small and slow increases in our Sing dollar value help? It will help us to use supply side policies to catch up in terms of our export competitiveness. Our supply side policies is supposed to over time lower the cost of production so that it will offset the erosion of export competitiveness caused by the stronger Sing dollar. So it will allow the supply side policies to help our exports play catch up in terms of their cost efficiency. Okay, right, so this is the reason why we carry out a modest and gradual appreciation of the Sing dollar. You're good? You understand what's going on? Let's go on to talk about something more complicated. Now, there were a few occasions in Singapore's history that we carry out this thing called a 0% appreciation. But that is very, very difficult to explain because, let me ask you, okay, the last time round we took a 0% appreciation was 2016, 2017. And then one time before that was during the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, you may have heard some of our ministers saying the term 2009 global financial crisis. Okay, the global financial crisis actually started in August 2008. Okay, it didn't start in 2009. 2009, okay, was when Singapore went into a recession where we had negative 1% economic growth. By the way, if you're wondering how is the economy predicted to be, MTI has estimated that our economy will be between -1% to -4%. So it may be as bad as -4%, which is 4 times worse than the 2008 global financial crisis. Okay, so that's that. And unemployment in the US, some economists project that the unemployment rate may go as high as 30%. Previously, before the COVID-19 outbreak, US unemployment was at about 5%. So it is expected to go up to about 30%. Now, let me ask you, if in times of inflation, we carry out a modest and gradual appreciation. So by logical deduction, right, in times where the economy sucks, instead of appreciation, what theoretically, theory, not reality, in theory, what should we do? Think about it, then write down. I'm waiting for everybody's answer before I move on for this part. I only got 4 answers, 5 answers, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so everybody seems to be agreeing that if times are good and there's inflation, we should carry out appreciation. If times are bad, we should carry out depreciation, theoretically. So you can see that Singapore did not carry out a depreciation. We didn't. And let's try to explore the reasons why. Why in the 2008 global financial crisis and why in 2016, 2017 we did not carry out depreciation, but instead we carry a 0% appreciation. Now let's think about this. Let's look at the present situation. If we were to actually allow the Sing dollar to depreciate, okay, what is the most dangerous thing that will happen when the Sing dollar depreciates now? If your Sing dollar becomes weaker, what is the most dangerous thing that will happen now? Think about it. Okay, no need to write answer in text form in the chat box. Just raise your hand. Okay, be honest, come on, raise your hand. How many of your parents did some stockpiling in the last 2 weeks? That means they went to the supermarket and bought some bunch of stuff back. Hands up, come. Okay, 1, 2, it's okay, don't need to be embarrassed, it's fine, come on, be honest. How many of y'all did, the parents did, a bit kanchong, they bought some stuff home? Okay, good. I mean, I didn't do stockpiling per se, but I did buy 2 to 3 tins of milk powder, which is supposed to last for only 2 weeks because I have 3 kids. So I don't think that qualifies as really stockpile per se. Now, if they are already somewhat panicking and that's why they did stockpiling, if vegetables, eggs, rice and everything became more expensive, what do you think their reaction would be? Do you think that if everything became more expensive, do you think they will panic? Fish, rice, egg, vegetables, meat, everything became more expensive. Do you think they will panic further? Will or not? Will panic or not? Will panic, right? If our Sing dollar became weaker, that's what's going to happen. All your things are imported, so everything is going to become more expensive. Eggs, rice, vegetables, butter, every single nonsense out there in your supermarket is going to become more expensive because our Sing dollar is weaker. So question, do you want your Sing dollar to depreciate? You don't quite want your Sing dollar to depreciate, so you don't want, so that's point number 1. Point number 2, by right, if you want your Sing dollar to depreciate, you want it to depreciate because you want it to help what? What is the purpose of letting the Sing dollar depreciate? You want it to help what? To boost what? Come on. Absolutely, right? So you want your Sing dollar to depreciate because you want your exports to become cheaper. You want your exports to become cheaper, then you want more people to buy, then your AD will increase, then your national income will increase. That is why you want your Sing dollar to depreciate. But let's do a reality check. Yes, a weaker Sing dollar will cause your exports to become cheaper. But unfortunately, for Singapore, we manufacture our exports using, hello? Yo. Yes, we manufacture our exports using imported inputs, imported raw materials. So what's going to happen to prices of your imported raw materials? The prices are going to go up, right? So your cost of production is going to go up, right? So your export competitiveness will cause your prices, your weaker Sing dollar will cause your export prices to go down, okay, which lends a boost to your export competitiveness. But this fall in export prices is going to be immediately pushed up by the increase in cost of production caused by your factor inputs becoming more expensive. It pushes it right back up. So it makes it like not very helpful, to actually do that. Okay, so in the end, do you think depreciation is a good idea? Do you think depreciation is a good idea? No, right? Okay, so if depreciation is not a good idea, then we shouldn't carry depreciation. So, but yet, in times of global economic recession, like in 2008, okay, or now, do you think there is any inflation in times of global financial crisis or in this COVID-19 crisis? Do you think that there is any inflation? In fact, things outside now, are they becoming more expensive or are they becoming cheaper? You go and think about it. Are things becoming more expensive or things becoming cheaper? Yo, cheaper or more expensive? Cheaper, right? Everything is becoming cheaper, right? Right, so businesses that are not doing well, yesterday I was going to help my friend who's also a tutor. Actually, Jing Yong, you know him. We're going to help him buy a web camera, but they are all out of stock. Right, so we walk past a few stores, a few retail stores, Skechers, but don't go out and buy now, please, buy online. So Skechers is offering 1 for 1. So you buy one shoe, get one shoe free. What the hell is that? Like, I've never seen something like that. Right, buy one shoe, get one shoe free. Eh. Wow, that's a bit nuts. Oh. So everything's like getting cheaper, right? At this juncture. I mean, except for your supplies at supermarkets. Everything else is becoming cheaper. And then facial mask is becoming more expensive. But really everything else is becoming cheaper because firms are offering discounts. Okay, right. So, how? If things are becoming cheaper, got inflation or not? Have or not? Got inflation or not? No inflation, right? If there's no inflation, your modest and gradual appreciation is supposed to solve what problem again? Your modest and gradual appreciation is supposed to solve what problem? Okay, so it's supposed to solve the problem of inflation. So if the problem of inflation doesn't exist, does it make sense to continue with a modest and gradual appreciation of the Sing dollar? Does it make sense to continue with that? No, right? The modest and gradual appreciation doesn't make sense, right? So shouldn't continue with modest and gradual appreciation, right? So depreciation not good, modest and gradual appreciation not good. So does it make sense that doing nothing is the best thing to do? Makes sense, right? Okay, so that's why we carry out a 0% appreciation. So everybody is like, when they look at this, they're like quite shocked. Huh? What the hell? Do nothing, then what? Then things will improve, man, by doing nothing. No, it's not that doing nothing things will improve. It's like, you know now what you're supposed to do. What are you supposed to do now? You're supposed to do nothing. You're supposed to stay at home, right or not? So you don't go out and go and catch the virus and spread to others, right? So sometimes doing nothing can be the best thing to do, right? Okay, this is one of those situations, both health and economic wise, right? So that's why, okay, we did a 0% appreciation in 2008 during the global financial crisis, and in 2016 and 2017, why did we move to a 0% appreciation? It was because we were having deflation. And if you're having deflation, means you don't have inflation. And the modest and gradual appreciation is supposed to deal with inflation. Inflation doesn't exist, so you don't need a modest and gradual appreciation. Okay, right, so here's something interesting. MAS is calling for a emergency policy statement on 30th March. I told you all that it was supposed to be on 14th April. They pushed it earlier to 30th March because it cannot wait. Okay, you now have quite smart brains now. After this lesson that I've been teaching you now, you can tell me already what MAS is likely to do. Go. What is MAS likely to do? We are currently still at a modest and gradual appreciation stance. What are we going to do in this announcement? Now you learn economics, you don't need to wait already. You don't need to wait for the policy statement to come out. Today is what date? Today is 29. Tomorrow you check. Today we guess. Tomorrow we double check. We see if we correct. Okay, so you all can be economists already now after this lesson. So today, tomorrow then the statement come out. Today we can predict already. So what are we going to predict? So everybody says 0% appreciation. Yes. Okay. So everybody says is that they're gonna have a 0% appreciation. Okay. Why? Number one, is there inflation right now? No. So no inflation. So don't need to carry out modest and gradual appreciation, right? And number two, should we carry out depreciation? No, because our imported goods will become expensive and then everybody will start panicking. Then everybody start panicking, then die. So cannot. Okay, so we cannot depreciate the currency, and then also depreciating currency, remember, it doesn't do us much good because most of our raw materials are imported. So don't carry out depreciation. So the only logical thing to do is to actually carry out a 0% appreciation. Okay, now so I'm going to switch from my tablet back to my desktop. So just give me a minute. I want to show you all some articles. Okay, right. So let's read this part. It says you have the links already. By the way, it's all on top. If not, you can log into the RMS to check the link. Now, the MAS will release its 6 monthly monetary policy statement slightly earlier than usual on Monday. Okay, it will be made ahead of the usual April directive as core inflation last month hit a decade low. It fell into negative territory for the first time since January 2010. We are in the year 2020, so it's really 10 years. So for 10 years, our core inflation has never gone into negative territory. So this is crazy. Okay, so they say that there's going to be easing in monetary policy, which I'm going to explain to you what easing in monetary policy means in our context. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading. So you see, MAS manages monetary policy through exchange rate rather than through interest rates as other central banks do. Okay, let's move on and see. This raised the likelihood for a more aggressive monetary easing move, possibly a recentering of the band and not just a slight change in the appreciation bias. Now, later I'll explain to you what recentering of the band means. Okay, I'm going to explain to you that shortly. Alright, so this is basically what's happening. And then another article. Here's another article. MAS brings forward monetary policy statement firming easing bets. Okay. Sing dollar fell sharply to a more than 10-year low against the US dollar. Deflation for the first time in a decade. Okay, the main price gauge is basically the core inflation. Okay. MAS manages policy through its currency rather than through interest rate. 5 economists said that it may take more drastic action by centering down the midpoint of the policy. Okay, right, so there's that. So let me just go back to my iPad. Just give me a minute. I'm going to draw for you. Oh, we're back. Okay, now, so just now we said that MAS will likely carry out a recentering, okay, a recentering of the policy band. So let's see what a recentering means. Give me a minute. Okay, so what does a recentering of the band means? I'm going to explain this to you shortly. Just give me some time to draw something out for you to see. Okay, so remember just now what we said? We said that this is P maximum and this is P minimum. And so the Sing dollar would be allowed to fluctuate within P max and P minimum, right? So they will be allowed to fluctuate within these two policy bands, right? So that's what we said just now about the Sing dollar. Now, what do you think has been happening to the Sing dollar lately? You should have read just now already. What's been happening to the Sing dollar lately? Waiting for your answers. What's been happening to the Sing dollar lately? What's been happening to the demand for Sing dollars lately? Yes, there is a fall in demand for the Sing dollar. Let's draw that out and see what happens as a result of the fall in demand for the Sing dollar. Okay, so if there was a fall in demand for the Sing dollar, your prices actually falls from P0 to P1, correct? Which remains within the band, right? What does recentering of the band means? So recentering of the band means we take P1 now as the new reference point. Okay, we take P1 now as the new reference point. So what MAS will basically do is that they will take P1 now as the new reference point, and then they will now say, okay, now this will be P max. And this will be the new P minimum. That means they take P1 as a new center point and then they put it as the middle point of your P max and P minimum. Which means to say that they shifted the red lines downwards to become the green lines. That is called recentering of the policy bands. Do you understand? Right, so if we recenter the policy band downwards, can you tell me, does it give the currency more room or less room for depreciation? You see, if you were previously able to depreciate to P minimum, if the rate P minimum, now your line is at P minimum, the green line, do you have more room or less room for depreciation to take place? Yeah, there's more room for depreciation to take place. So we are actually allowing for more room for depreciation to take place. That is what it means by this recentering of the policy bands, in case you are wondering. Okay? Right, so now what effect will it have on trade? I don't know. I don't particularly think that it's going to be very effective. It doesn't matter the currency is cheap. I don't think that if our currency is cheap, it will help much. But first of all, in terms of tourism, even if your currency is cheap, the people want to come also cannot come. Right? Then, second of all, if we're talking about trade, a lot of supply chains are being affected. Like production is being affected because our Malaysian workers, some of them are stuck in Malaysia. A lot of our raw materials, they are stuck worldwide because ships are not moving or workers are under lockdown, so they can't move goods and raw materials. So if you ask me what's the impact it will have on trade, it's not going to be significant and it won't be very effective. Okay, but it's still something that we need to do because the rest of the other countries are also doing the same. Okay, now let's spend some time going through China's exchange rate policy. So like yesterday, there was a student asking me why so funny, why specifically go through China. The reason why we specifically go through China is because every 2 years, the A-level exam paper is going to be about China. I don't believe you go and check the 10-year series. The 10-year series, right? You will see that that you're always being tested about China every other year. So that's the reason why we focus on China's exchange rate policy. Now let's have a look at what basically happened with China's exchange rate. Now China moved from using a fixed exchange rate to a managed for exchange rate, back to a fixed exchange rate, then to a managed for exchange rate, right? So it'll be moving back and forth from fixed exchange rate to managed for exchange rates. Okay, so in year 2000, China fixed its exchange rate at 8.2 yuan or renminbi per US dollar, and then in 2005 it allows it to actually appreciate to some extent and move to a managed float. In 2008, it switched back to a fixed exchange rate system again, okay, before allowing it to float again in 2010, okay, and by 2012 it has hit 6.28 yuan per US dollar or renminbi per US dollar. Now, here's a question that I want you to spend time thinking about. Why did China adopt a fixed exchange rate system in 2000 and 2008? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that. Why did China adopt a fixed exchange rate system in year 2000 and 2008? Okay, now first of all, 2008 was what happened in 2008? Alright, 2008 was your global financial crisis. Okay, so what happened in 2000? What happened in year 2000? Year 2000 was your .com bubble burst. Okay, right, so no, Asian financial crisis was 1997, not 2000. So 2000 is something else, is the .com bubble burst. Now, so what has this got to do with China adopting a fixed exchange rate system? Now, so I'm gonna spend some time explaining this to you. It's gonna be a little bit hard to follow if you're not paying attention, so please do pay attention. Okay. Now, in the last 20 years, right, what has been happening to demand for Chinese goods? In the last 20 years, what's been happening to demand for Chinese goods? It's been increasing, right? So if there's increased demand for Chinese goods, tell me what happens to demand for the renminbi. If demand for renminbi if demand for renminbi increase, the renminbi will correct. Now, if the renminbi appreciate, then what does it do to prices of Chinese goods? It becomes more expensive. If it becomes more expensive, what happens to demand for Chinese goods? Can you see this very strange cycle going on? That the very virtue of the Chinese goods demand increasing causes demand for renminbi to increase. When the renminbi demand increase, renminbi will appreciate. If the renminbi appreciate, it actually makes the Chinese goods more expensive. When it makes the Chinese goods more expensive, demand for Chinese goods will fall. Which means to say that over time, your Chinese goods will become more and more expensive and therefore less and less attractive. That's what's supposed to happen to demand for a Chinese good as a result of the demand for it. It's a bit weird, but it's something that's supposed to and should happen. Okay, right. So what is China trying to do during these periods? So by right, what should have been happening to the Chinese currency? It should have been appreciating. Okay, the last 20 years, throughout all time, the Chinese goods demand has been increasing, so demand for Chinese currency should have been increasing, so your currency should have been appreciating. But if the Chinese currency appreciated, it has a negative impact on Chinese goods, demand for Chinese goods. So 2000 and 2008, they decided that the economy is not doing super well and we don't want our demand for exports to be affected. So we are going to go ahead and freeze our exchange rate so that our currency remains, what's the word to use? So that the Chinese currency remains weak. The Chinese currency, the Chinese currency strength remains weak. The Chinese currency strength remaining weak, what is it going to boost? The Chinese currency remaining weak, what is it going to boost? It's going to boost exports, right? Right, so Chinese demand for Chinese exports will go up. So it gives them an artificial advantage during these periods of crisis. Okay, right. Then if that is the case, can you all think of reasons why you will always eventually see that China eventually did allow the currency to appreciate? Can you all think of why? Why eventually your Chinese currency, the Chinese central bank will always allow it to appreciate? Can you all tell me why? Yes, the correct answer is because of inflation. Now, think about this. If the Chinese currency remains weak, Chinese citizens trying to buy imported goods, they're going to find the imported goods if the Chinese currency is very weak, they're going to find imported goods very expensive. Right? So their standard of living is going to suffer as a result of the Chinese currency being weak. And contrary to your idea of China having a lot of raw materials, yes, China does have a lot of raw materials, but that is, when you compare to the amount of goods and services they produce, it's not nearly enough. So actually, China is a net importer of raw materials. And if China actually imports a lot of raw materials, when the Chinese currency is weak, what happens to their cost of production? It actually goes up, causing cost push inflation. And the relentless increase in demand for Chinese exports will also cause demand pull inflation because AD is going to rise. So China is going to be attacked by inflation on all fronts as it allows its currency to be weak. So yes, the economy is stronger, but the inflation is also like crazy. Okay, so eventually China also had no choice but to eventually allow its currency to appreciate to some extent whenever they feel that it is possible to do so. Okay, Right, so with that, we are done with the slides. So we're going to come back to look at some articles. Now, before I come back to let you look at some articles, maybe let me just share. Can you all see my browser, my web browser? Can you all see? Can or not? Can you see my web browser? Can Okay. Right, so if you can see my web browser, right, then I am going to show you some COVID-19 statistics. Just give me a minute. Okay, this is going to be quite sobering to see. Okay, US, about I think 8 days ago, they were at 10,000 plus cases. That was about 8 days ago. So the numbers have now reached 120 plus thousand. Okay, so that's why it's pretty sobering to see. Oh, can zoom in, wait so let me just zoom in for you. Okay, so okay, unfortunately I can't zoom in. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to drop the link for you all to go and see on your own in case you find my screen too small. So just give me a minute. Okay, you can view it on your own web browser. So US 120,000 cases with 2,000 over deaths. Italy 92,000 cases, China 81,000 cases, Spain 73,000, Germany 57,000, France 37,000, Iran 35,000, UK 17,000, Switzerland 14,000, Netherlands 9,700, South Korea 9,500. Okay, where's Singapore? Okay, we are here, 802 cases. There's a third death today. Oh, so I think while lessons were ongoing, there's a new death that I didn't manage to catch up on, so I'm going to go and read about that later. Okay, but anyway, if you have a look at this, you look at US, I want you to think about this. Given what's been happening to the US in the last few weeks, can you tell me what you expect to happen to demand for the US dollar? Can you tell me what you expect to happen to demand for the US dollar given the developments in the US for the last few weeks? Okay, what do you expect to happen to the demand for the US dollars? You guys are expecting the demand for the US dollar to decrease. Okay, and I'll tell you that under normal circumstances, I will agree with you. So I'm going to tell you that US dollar is not normal. US dollar doesn't obey by the regular rules, and so if you don't believe me, I'm going to show it to you. Okay, now this is the US dollar last year. So throughout most of last year, it hovered around $1 exchanging for 1.36 or so Sing dollars. You look at the moment the COVID-19 crisis started and became worse, you see instead, so this period US was itself experiencing a high increase in number of cases. But you look at the strength of the US dollar, the US dollar is going up. You see, it went up to as high as 1.45 Sing dollars. So the US dollar in the last couple or 1-2 months, it has been appreciating instead of the depreciation that you guys were expecting. You know why? Okay, if you don't know why, I am giving you an article to read. I don't know y'all can access it or not. You may need to sign up for a trial. I've also printed out the article for you. I also put it in a PDF form for you. Okay, so I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to go and look through it. Take some time to read through these 2 articles that I'm sending you. This is the last thing that we're discussing for today already. I'm going to take some time to read through these 2 articles that I've sent you. Okay, just a minute more for you all to finish reading the articles. Okay, right. So let me take some time to explain what is happening to US dollar first. To do that, I'm going to explain to you basically um, why gold is a very unique and special thing. Okay, so let me have a show of hands. How many of you, your parents have some gold jewelry or gold bars at home that they keep in a safety deposit box? Okay, if your parents, they keep some gold, hands up. If your parents, they keep some supply of gold at home, like some gold jewelry or gold bar or whatever, they buy routinely, sometimes randomly they will buy, or friends give as a gift, and then they will keep it. Hands up. Hi, up, please. Let me have a show of hands. It's a very Asian thing, right? To actually buy or keep gold. Do you realize that gold is quite useless? Do you realize that gold is quite useless, other than for like use in electronics and for like looking good and nice, and actually most of the gold jewelry don't even look nice, right? You realize that gold is quite useless? If that's the case, why is the gold prices so high? Okay, now so gold, right, is actually seen as a store of value. Now let me explain this to you. In the last few weeks, stock markets have been crashing, right? Stock markets have been crashing, and do you think that around the world people are buying properties now? Do you think around the world people are buying properties? So people are not, they're selling stocks, they're selling properties, which means prices of stocks are falling, means prices of properties are falling, right? So for people who still have spare cash, do you think they want to put their stuff into risky things like stocks or properties, which now is crashing? So the majority of people, if they have spare cash, they don't want to put it in stocks, they don't want to put it in properties. Okay, actually we have a chat about that another time. That's actually not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to go and buy stocks and buy properties now. Okay, so don't follow the norm, if you're wondering. If you want to make money, don't follow the norm. Anyway, so since nobody is buying stocks, nobody's buying properties, and if you have some cash, then what will people do? They'll say, hey, I don't want to put my stuff into risky things like stocks and properties because they're crashing like nobody's business now. So they got nowhere to put their money. Where do you think they put? They go and buy gold. They think that, oh, you know, my gold is very nice, I can lay at home, I can build a mountain of gold at home. The gold will never leave me, it will always love me, I can hug it to sleep. My goal will always be there. So they see gold as like this store of value and in times of uncertainty and in times of crisis, people will always switch to buying gold. Okay, so they will buy gold, and that's the reason why you see there's a global gold rush now, right? What I'm gonna do now is that the next couple of days I'm going to go and see if I have some gold. If I have some gold, I'm going to go and take it and go and sell it, because now I'm going to make money because the gold prices have increased to a ridiculous price. Okay, now so when in times of uncertainty, people will look to this kind of supposedly safe investments to put their money in, and gold is one of them. Okay, and US dollar basically is like gold. Okay, it has a special status. It's not like you would think that in time periods like now, the US dollar will be crashing, but it's not crashing because it's not US citizens buying their goods. It's not foreigners are buying US goods. It's not that foreigners are investing in the US per se. It's that in other countries, okay, you are seeing that, hey, I don't want to keep Sing dollar anymore. I don't want to keep ringgit anymore. I don't want to keep Indonesian rupiah anymore. I don't want to keep all of this money because they are going to crash like mad. Where should I put my money to? Okay, let's see. US is a world superpower. Okay, US is the largest economy in the world. US has the largest military might. Okay, so if there's any one country that will not go down, okay, supposedly is US. Okay, so US is supposed to be this huge, strong store of value. So everybody just basically buy US dollar now. That's the reason why. So that's the reason why US dollar is appreciating, because they think that of all countries, US is the safest in terms of its strength. is still the strongest economy in the world. It's still the biggest, largest economy in the world. And many countries, remember we were talking about these developing countries that peg their currency to US dollar. That means to say that they actually keep a large amount of US dollar as reserves. So US dollar has a very special status because people don't just buy US dollar to use them to buy their goods. People buy US dollar as a store of value and investment. So US dollar has this crazy value attached to it that is not rational like gold. You buy gold not because of rational reasons, but because you feel that I don't want to put my money anywhere else. That's why I put it in gold. Not because you feel that gold is particularly useful. Alright? So in that case, that is the reason why you weren't expecting the US dollar to depreciate, just like I was expecting the US dollar to depreciate. But you realize that the US dollar didn't depreciate. Why did it depreciate? Because everybody is buying gold and they are also buying US dollar because they are seen to be a tremendous store of value. Alright, so you can go and read this article on Wall Street Journal. Coronavirus sparks a global gold rush. I was really expecting this global gold rush since a month plus ago. I was telling my friends, hey, anybody want to buy some gold from me? I will sell it to you at this good price. Now, you know, my because I haven't sold my gold, my gold is now worth a little bit more. Okay, not that I have a lot of gold, I have a bit this gold jewelry at home. Okay, right, so having that said, we are kind of done for today's class. There are a couple more things that I will want to actually point out to you after I stop the recording. So just give me a minute first. Let me stop the recording for the lesson first, then I'll go through a couple more things with you.